and welcome back to the Sharia Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Hendrickson, and I'm here today with a very good friend of mine, Miss Tami Wollensak. I'm very excited to introduce Tami to you. As I said last time, I'm really using this platform to try to bring resources to everyone who may need them, things that I wished I had known when I was in certain parts of my journey and didn't even know that these things were out there as resources and support as people are moving through some of these challenging life changes. So Miss Tami is a certified divorce lending specialist, and she really works closely with her clients who are unfortunately moving through the divorce process to help them figure out kind of how to make sense of it all. So I will let her kind of hop in and give us a little bit of background on herself, what she does, and what makes her different than maybe another traditional mortgage lender. So Tami, why don't you just give us a little background? And thanks for being here, by the way.
No, thank you, Ashley. I was going to say, I think it's just amazing what you're doing, and thanks for having me on, because I think it's very much tied together with people's stress in their lives. And, you know, some of the things, the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing is really to help try to eliminate some of that. And so I've been in the mortgage world for 28 years plus for a long time, and in different facets of the business. And then when I started working with individuals and helping them with their loans, I realized that there was a really big disconnect between mortgage lending and the legal world.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times people are going through a divorce, and unfortunately they don't have a lot of guidance on what, you know, their financial situation needs to be, or, you know, or especially around the house. The house sometimes is their biggest asset, right? And they are really emotionally tied to it. And most of the time, a lot of times it's because they have children that have grown up in the house, or they've lived in the house for a very long time, and or they, you know, remodeled it, or they've had parties in it, or whatever it is, and they feel that they really want to hold on to the home for whatever the reason is. And so they take a stand and they're like, I'm keeping the house. And I hear that all the time, I'm keeping the house. But they don't really understand what that looks like to keep the house. So in my journey, I was, you know, running across a lot of, it happened to be women. You know, I think women a lot of times seek out more information than men do, and they try to connect with people to gather the information. So a lot of women were coming to me and like, I'm keeping the house. And I was like, okay, great. And then I'd get their settlement agreement that is already signed by the judge and all the things, inked and signed. And guess what? They can't, because they, for whatever reason, they don't qualify. It's not set up appropriately. The language in the settlement, I can't carry out because it conflicts with mortgage guidelines.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a real problem, and I could really be a benefit or a help to these people that are challenged through this and not understanding it. If I can get to people at the very beginning of the process and help guide them through that, then they're going to be able to make better informed decisions and have better success post-divorce. What that looks like for them. What are they signing up for? They really need to know that. So
yeah, I agree. And I wish I would have known even the questions to ask when I was going through my divorce process. I do want to say just quickly, you mentioned stress, and I do think that this is an important thing to kind of tie together. So usually, guys, we're focused on functional medicine and mental health. But a big part of that is stress and how much stress we have in our lives and how we're managing it. And divorce is a super stressful experience, even if it's not like a violent fighting divorce situation. You could be good friends, just parting ways, but there's still so much emotion and stress that's involved. So it becomes really important to have a nice support network around you, one who is unbiased, one who is not emotionally involved, and one who has a ton of experience in this space and can help guide you to see kind of what is the right thing to do, because that will, one, set you up, like you said, Tami, for a more successful post-divorce experience, but also really help to minimize the stress during that process. And so if you are, and I'm sorry if you are, or maybe congratulations, but if you are finding yourself in a situation where you are faced with potential divorce or you are divorcing, I cannot encourage you enough to reach out to Tami. She is a true professional. She knows her stuff, but most importantly, she really genuinely cares about the people she works with, and she will go above and beyond to make sure that she's doing her best work for you. Some things that I think are important maybe to talk about, because I know in my experience, I did keep the house, but I had been a stay-at-home mom. I could not put the mortgage in my name. So the mortgage stayed in my ex's name, but I felt like a sense of relief because I didn't have to move my kids again. However, the mortgage was most of what I was earning every month, right? So it became eventually a point in time where I had no choice but to move on. And, you know, everything happens for a reason. We all learn our lessons one way or another. But again, really wish I would have known that there was people out there like you who could have helped kind of guide me through this process.
I talk to women every day that are in similar situations. There's a lot of times, you know, if you're taking care of the children, you're taking care of the home and all that kind of stuff, and you don't have a standard income, you know, you're not working outside the marital home. I like to say working outside the home because you're still working regardless, right? You know, it's not like you're not doing anything. It's almost one of the hardest jobs. But when you're doing that and you are going to be reliant on support from your spouse to, you know, moving forward into the next chapter of your life, then I do projections and I say, okay, if you were to keep this marital home, and this is the amount that you're projected to get for spousal support and child support, then what does that look like for you? And are you taking on a giant mortgage payment? Because when you do keep the home in your, if you do try to keep the home and you refinance the home into your own name, then what happens is you take on whatever the market is at that time. So you could have potentially used your support income to qualify to keep that home in your name. But maybe if somebody had gotten to you and said, Ashley, look, this is what it would look like if you do that, you know, and you take on this big McMansion mortgage, then, you know, this is what the payment's going to look like. This is what your support is. You might, and not to mention, that's not all of it. It's not just a mortgage payment when you have a home. You also have a lot of maintenance. It's constant, right?
Yeah, all the things you don't really think about, right? Like yard maintenance. You could do it yourself, but if you're a single mom and you're working, good luck finding time.
How do you keep up? Or like in my case, like my house was around 10 plus years old at this point in time, and now things are starting to break. It's like, oh my God, my refrigerator's broken. I have to go buy a new refrigerator. Like, oh, awful. So anyways, you start thinking, so I help guide them and say, okay, look, these are what the options, this is what it looks like. And in your settlement, a lot of times what happens is your marital assets are all kind of put together and you start dividing them. And in that division, part of the equity in the house is part of the marital assets. So sometimes it's not even just the mortgage the way it currently is, the balance on the mortgage, but you're also having to buy out your spouse in order to keep that home. So, you know, then your mortgage payment can look very, very differently than it does. And that is really eye-opening for a lot of women especially because their main concern when they are talking to me is, I want to keep the house because I want to keep the kids in the house, and I
Right.
don't want to have them uprooted or have any kind of pressure more on them than necessary. They're already going through a lot. They're already going through a big transition.
Yeah.
But
And
I always tell, one of the things that I tell women is, but what is that going to look like for you to have all this stress, right? We're going back to the stress thing. Now I have this big payment, and my income looks very differently than it did when I had, other money coming in my bank account, and I'm having to look at every dollar now. And now my kids still want to be, in activities, and they still want to go out to eat, and they still want to do all these things that they do because they're kids and they have no concept of money.
right.
And now I have this house. So what is that going to do to your stress? And, mom and the kids feeling that stress of mom.
Right.
Mom's going to be stressed. So guess what's going to happen to the kids? They're going to feel the stress.
Absolutely. Right.
So
And that's not good for anybody.
Not good for anybody. So a lot of times when I spell it out and it's in black and white, and I do it what's called a divorce mortgage plan, we sit down, I give them what the options look like. Okay, this is what it looks like to do this. This is what it looks like to do number 2. And this is what it looks like maybe to sell the marital home and maybe buy a smaller home. Maybe something that's more manageable for you. Maybe something that really fits within your budget of what your support's going to look like,
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, yeah, then they can make a better informed decision. Then if they really are thinking about keeping the house, they're making it with all the things.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
not
And so
just,
now we're back to education and empowerment, right?
yeah,
If you don't know what you don't know,
right.
and in order to make really good, strong, solid decisions and take your power back, you have to be informed and educated about the process and all of the options.
Yeah.
But something else that I think you and I have chatted about before, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about today, is when we're looking at the division of assets in a divorce. And, the house maybe, let's say, is worth $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to decide how to evenly divide things.
Mm-hmm.
Is the house really worth $500,000 just because that's the market value? Because I think people maybe don't always get that concept either.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think because people are like, oh, I was awarded this giant asset, because a lot
Right.
of times it's one of the biggest assets that a couple has, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, yay, I won this thing. But no, because what happens is there's a loan typically on the house. More than likely, more times than not, there's a mortgage on the house. So really, the asset is really the money between what the value of the home is and what the mortgage value is. So let's say in your case, like you said, the house is valued at $500,000. What if there's a $400,000 mortgage on it? Then really your asset that you're fighting for is $100,000, and
Right.
really half of that is already yours. So
Right.
a lot of times, so then it's 50,000, right?
Yeah.
And if you sell a house, there's costs to selling a house that people don't take into consideration. You don't just get the whole 500,000. First you pay off the mortgage, and then typically there's costs. Realtor fees are around 5%.
Yep.
And then taxes and all the other stuff that's thrown in there, because everybody's got to get a piece of that, is around, maybe another 3. I usually say 8%. So 8% of 500,000, it's going to cost 40 to sell the house. So you fought for that house, and then you fought for it so that your kid could get through, the next couple, 3 years, whatever. And now you own a home that's worth 500, you owe 400, you're going to sell the house. Now you've already paid him out his 50, and you only have 40,000, and now you pay the house, you pay all the fees. Guess what? You have nothing.
Right. 10 grand after all that. So it's
After all that.
really important to get a good, clear picture of exactly what things are worth, what the cost is, what the options are. So then can you tell us a little bit about what makes you different from just a traditional, I mean, I think you've gone into quite a bit, but just to
Yeah.
highlight a bullet point, if someone is like, okay, I'm in a situation, maybe I do need to sell my house. What's different between just going to like the bank or wherever we
Yeah.
go for a loan or a
Yeah.
mortgage and working with someone who is certified in this divorce process? Like
That's a
yourself.
big one, I think, because I think everybody knows a mortgage person. I mean, we're like on every, just like most people know a realtor,
Right.
right? And there's also a certification for realtors, believe it or not. It's a
I'm just going to
really,
ask that.
there is, and it's, as I've gone through this, I realized how important that is as well, because, and I can swing back around and talk about that. But as far as the mortgage is concerned, I focus completely on that. I understand the process of divorce. I can speak the language to the attorneys. I can talk to your team, your financial advisor, your attorney. And then I can, at the end of the day, I happen to be able to do a mortgage. So I know where the gaps are. I know how things are attempting to be set up, and I know if that's going to work or not post divorce. Because if it doesn't, and a lot of times your attorney is not the person to be relying on to make these decisions, they are not a mortgage person, and your financial advisor is not a mortgage person. And a lot of times, a mortgage person, just a standard broker out there in the community, they're just looking for the final settlement agreement. Okay, what was decided? What was agreed on?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm helping before you sign that dotted line. Once you sign the dotted line, it's done. It's a done deal, right? Unless you want to go back to court and fight. So, once it's set, once everything's settled, and it comes to me, I'm like, oh no, guess what? You don't qualify to do what you agreed to do. So it's much better. So I can get like a draft of the settlement once, everything's kind of written in, and I can say, oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to fly. And a lot of times I help the divorce team, the whole team, make a better decision. And if I can come in at the very beginning.
Yeah. And I think it's important what you said there, team.
Yeah.
Because I think, at least in my experience, when I was going through this, all
Yeah.
I knew was that I needed a lawyer.
Yeah.
I didn't know I needed a team. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know that my lawyer is not a financial advisor, couldn't give me good advice around long-term planning. I had no idea that there was even options around what to do with the house because I didn't feel, well, one, I wasn't educated about it, so I definitely wasn't feeling empowered. So I
Yeah.
just kind of went along with what was happening and was ready for it to be done. I didn't want to drag the process out. But I think educating, again, I can't hammer it home enough. People who are facing this life change is so important because there's so many little things that we don't think about because we are stressed. And we can't see clearly a lot of times, right? Even in healthy separations, right? Which
I tell women that all the time. I tell them, I know you feel like you're running through mud right now and you can't think clearly. I'm here to help you think for you. I'm here to give you this information because it really is. And I went through an amicable divorce, and I remember really not thinking clearly, not making good decisions myself. And really, as you get post divorce, every month, every year, you get more clarity, and you're like, oh wow, like I really was foggy. I really wasn't really clear on how things were going on.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, it's almost like your logical part of your brain can't work when the emotional part is overriding. So you come in and you are the logic during this very emotionally trying and stressful time for people, which is so important, right? You can help them stay grounded, make good financial decisions, walk them through the hard stuff because you've been through it, it, you know?
Yeah, no judgment on anything, on any situation. And I've had women cry to me many, many times, because they're so emotional about it. And I've had to tell women, you just don't qualify to keep this house based on, these numbers. It's just not a smart financial decision for you. Maybe renting is the option.
Yeah.
Maybe, it isn't buying another house at this particular time. And even though it's a hard thing to swallow, sometimes it's the best decision because you don't want to get yourself in a financial, burden where you're just completely bogged down and stressed with big giant bills.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, we both went through the process, I think, downsizing. And I think probably renting would have been a great option for me, but I wasn't there. I didn't know even how
Yeah.
to do that. That felt like I wasn't giving my kids the stability they needed or something. Like I had this weird story going on, which we all do to ourselves
Yeah.
every day, all day long about all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But this one gets particularly tricky for people, I think, because we're navigating so many different issues while we're moving through these types of separations.
Well, you're losing a life of how you knew, what you knew before.
Yeah.
So you're, completely changing everything you knew about yourself, even,
Right.
and then trying to help your kids navigate it. And like, it's just a lot. It's really a lot. And not making good decisions is nobody's fault, but it really is helpful, like you said, to surround yourself with professionals and not like going and asking your cousin or going and asking your best friend even. Your best friend is sometimes not even the right, like they mean well, and they're going to say, oh, you have to go out and go get a good attorney, and that's like everybody's advice. Oh my gosh, you have to get the best attorney. That might not even be the best advice,
Right.
like it might be take a step back and you can gather a lot of this information, and it can save you tons of money to be gathering all this information before going into your negotiations. You almost have to be the CEO of your own divorce. You have to kind of navigate it. Well, how do you do that when you're under so much stress and so much pressure?
Right.
You surround yourself with professionals that can help guide you, and you listen to them, and you
Yep.
make better informed decisions that way.
Absolutely. Because although your friends and family may have your best interests at heart, they're not necessarily emotionally uninvolved in the situation, especially
Right.
if it's been like a turbulent relationship, right? Where they
Yeah.
have very similar feelings to maybe the person who is going through the divorce.
Yep.
So, what are 3 tips or kind of really important things that you think anyone moving through this process or considering it should be thinking about?
Okay, so I think the first thing that what we've been saying is if there's a marital home or a home involved in the process at all, give me a call. I mean, give a certified divorce lending professional. I can lend in 46 of 50 states, so I can help people across the country if you're listening to this outside of Illinois. But I also think that surrounding yourself with professionals, if you don't know professionals, as we were alluding to earlier, there's a certified divorce real estate expert. There's a certified divorce financial analyst. I mean, there are professionals that they focus on people going through a divorce. That's what they do, is help them through this process. And
Yes.
sometimes some of the decisions, even on how the division of assets is working, I consult with some of these other type of professionals, like, because it makes, I stay in my lane, they stay in their lane. So it's really good to, build a team around you would be number one. Number two, don't assume that if you're home, that you have to keep the kids, I guess, in the home, and it's going to, that's going to be the best thing for you and the children. It's
Right.
not always the best thing. The kids, a lot of times people say, well, the kids are resilient and all that stuff. But yeah, they are resilient, but they also are going to feed off of your energy, right? And your stress. and the best thing that you can do is making sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
I think that is like key. You can't help somebody else if you're feeling sick or stressed or, so do everything you can to help yourself first, and then you can help others. And then the third thing I think is just breathe, and know that you will get to the other side. It doesn't feel like it. There is another side, and you will get through it. You will get through the process, and do the best job you can with, if there is an opportunity to have your spouse be in your life and you can deal with them in whatever capacity, try, because they're going to be in your life for a very long time if you have children together.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. I think being able to have a really healthy, strong co-parenting relationship is so crucial, not just to the couple's stress level, but to the quality of life for all involved.
Everybody involved.
The kids, the husband, the wife, everyone benefits when there is this healthy, mutually respectable relationship where you're coming together for the kids. And so being able to work with someone like yourself who can keep people grounded and help take some of the emotion out. And we will talk with one of, I think, your partners, Teresa, who does collaborative. For those of you who don't know, that's a thing. You can be friends and still get divorced. And that's pretty cool. So Tami is around a lot of these types of professionals who are focused on really, I think, keeping the relationship, although it has shifted from maybe an intimate, romantic, marriage type partnership, there's still a relationship and a partnership there that needs to be honored and valued and can be done through the right processes with the right people. So it doesn't always have to be nasty and, fighting to the death sort of situation. And Tami's got a lot of really great resources if that's the route you'd prefer taking, which I would encourage everyone to do.
I think people start out wanting to do that, and it's really important that you surround yourself with the right professionals, because if you get a hold of the wrong professionals, attorneys, can really make that process not as amicable as you'd like them to be. And it's not any fault of yours or your spouse's. A lot of times it's the process.
Yep. And you're along for the ride if you don't know anything.
Right. And if you're in the wrong process, it's not going to be good. And I fortunately went through an amicable divorce and have a very good co-parenting relationship with my my children's father. And I feel for women all the time, because it's still a hard thing to do. But I tell people I just think of him kind of as my annoying cousin now. We talk all the time, and we have to make a lot of decisions. When you have kids together, there's a lot of decisions still to be made that you have to kind of agree on, or at least talk through.
Sure.
And that's ongoing. And then your kids, they graduate from high school, and then they go to college, and then they get married, and then they have babies, and then they, it's ongoing. It's a lifetime of stuff.
Yeah. So tell me this, do you have a good success story that you'd like to share?
Yeah, many of them. I feel like anybody that's, I get testimonials all the time from women that feel that I've saved them because they didn't understand the process. And, when I sit down with them and I put these options in front of them, and they pivot and they make a different decision than they started out thinking, and it mostly comes around like, I'm keeping the marital home. And then they think, they are like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and sell it, and I'm going to start fresh, and I'm going to buy something, and I'm going to build my surroundings around me and have a fresh start. they are just so grateful. And I get messages all the time from people that are like, oh, I love my new house and thank you so much for helping me. And, they'll send me pictures and like decorate it the way that they want and, like all the things. And it's really, really, it warms my heart really to be able to help people through that because they're like my tribe, they're like, I've been through it. I can feel it. And I know what that feels like to have your own space all of a sudden and be like, oh, I don't have to look at that wall that I asked him to fix the light fixture and he didn't for like 5 years and it was still like whatever it is,
Well, there's a lot to take in when you think about that, right? Because you may have great memories, maybe, or you think your kids do, but there's also a lot of like maybe not so great energy left over in that space. And so reframing it, right? Re-educating, giving people a different perspective. And again, the education and then empowering them to go create their own space and start the story fresh. And have something that is theirs that they can feel pride and ownership about. That's really powerful. And I don't know that gets talked about enough.
No. And I feel it because I downsized significantly my marital home. And I was like, oh, my kids are going to they're not going to have the giant basement anymore. And they're not going to But then I was like, you know what? I can paint the walls any color I want. I can make the kitchen look like anything I want. I can, have a flowery comforter if I want.
It's the little things.
It's the little things, so like when I embraced all that and was like, and my kids, they have small rooms now, but they're fine. They shared a room for a little while and they were fine. When they were little, I had them share a room, and they had bunk beds and they were completely fine with that. So it's totally a reframing of and then just, I know now that I can afford the mortgage payment. If I need to go out and buy a new refrigerator, I'm not going to completely freak out, like,
peace of mind is huge, especially in the healing process, right? And a lot of us are coming out of these relationships, maybe not in the best health conditions. So getting that peace of mind and taking some of that financial burden and stress off of your plate makes a big difference, believe it or not.
I was in it. And I know you and I have been through years of, our own journeys with our health and stuff like that. And I totally think that a lot of mine health problems and stresses and stuff like that were based on, going through that and like unraveling what that was and feeling like shame because of the, being through a divorce and stuff like that. I mean, that in your community, sometimes you're not like, part of the groups that you used to be, part of the neighborhood stuff that you used to do with couples or even part of the same friendship groups, you have to build a whole new world around you. And sometimes that it feels very, very daunting.
It's a hard decision to make on lots of levels. I was the first one in my family, I think maybe ever, to get divorced. And that was a pretty heavy burden that I carried in for nothing really, because when it came down to it, no one thought less of me and they were all there to support me. So, there we go back to the storytelling again and how we're starting to create our own stress and our suffering by this story that we create and we choose to believe. So again, getting around a good team of professionals that can kind of help you see clearly, keep you grounded, both financially with the mortgage, health-wise, all the things, right? Mental support is crucial. So thank you so much for being here. I think that you've provided an invaluable service to people going through this process. How can they find you?
So my name is more difficult, Tami Wollensak, but I have a website, takeorleavethehouse.com. I think that's easier to remember, and that has all my contact information. Feel free to grab time on my calendar. You can Zoom with me, you can call me, you can email me. So yeah, and that has all my social media platforms on it as well.
Awesome. So guys, take or leave the house. If you can't remember that, although it's pretty simple and quite catchy in my opinion, you can always info us at Shreya Wellness, info@ShreyaWellness.com, and we will get you connected with Tami if you have some questions. Do you do consultations too?
Yes, everything. And that's really important, Ashley, is it does not cost you anything to work with me. My consultations are free, and my services are free. I cannot, because of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, I do not charge for my services. So it doesn't rack up your bills any higher than it would be. So please use my knowledge and my services. And if there happens to be a transaction at the end of the day, I would just hope that you would consider me for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very, very important, because that, I think, is what also keeps a lot of women from getting the support they need, is they can't afford to, or they don't know how to afford it. So if you didn't hear her, her services are free. So take or leave the home.
Takeorleavethehouse.com.
Takeorleavethehouse.com.
Yeah.
And reach out to Tami if you need some support. We're here for you too. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Always a pleasure. Tami, thank you so much for being here. And we'll see you next time.